welcome to you. You're listening to the Music Business Buddy with me, Johnny Amos, podcasting out of Birmingham in England. I'm the author of the book, The Music Business for Music Creators, available in hardback, paperback, ebook format. I'm a music creator with a variety of credits. I'm a consultant, an artist manager, and a senior lecturer in music business and music creation. Wherever you are and whatever you do, consider yourself welcome to this podcast and to a part of the community. I'm here to try and educate and inspire music creators from all over the world in their quest to achieving their goals by gaining a greater understanding of the business of music. Okay, so in this week's episode, I'm going to be exploring a very, very important subject and one which I've not really tackled properly on the podcast until now, and that is the subject of mental health in the music industry. The music industry is facing a growing mental health crisis, with musicians experiencing, higher rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental health challenges when compared to the general population. This could be factors such as burnout, financial instability, growing demanding work schedules, performance anxiety, even the pressure to just kind of maintain public persona. It can all contribute towards this crisis. Now, fortunately, there are resources, there are organisations dedicated to supporting the mental well-being of music creators, of people in the industry, of music fans even, and those even creating music on a recreational level. So in this week's episode, I will be interviewing Jeordie Shenton, who's Programmes Lead for Tonic Music, a UK-based charity that was founded in 2012 upon the belief that participation in music is good for mental health. Originally based in Portsmouth, they've developed into a registered charity operating across the UK through the provision of both in-person and online services. Now, from their initial work in kind of raising awareness, they now champion action. This is achieved by providing mental health support to ensure people continue professionally and recreationally to engage in music. The Tonic Music team includes qualified mental health practitioners, each with significant experience participating in the music industry. So I will now pass over to the interview with the wonderful Jeordie Shenton and the role that Tonic Music play in the music industry. Jeordie, welcome to the Music Business Buddy. I've been aware of you and your work for a while, and it's really, really, really good to have you here, mate. First and foremost, most importantly, how are you?
Wonderful. It's been having a great time. Very busy time in the world of music, but all positive stuff.
Good man, good man. Well, may I just start, Jeordie, by just, kind of congratulating you, right, on the success of what Music Tonic helps people to achieve. Music making is a process that is generally, considered to be something that's good for one's mental health. But the flip side of that, sometimes, it can create burnout or isolation or things like that. But this is something that Music Tonic seem to have been a little ahead of the curve on, because, Music Tonic's been going for a while now. So how has the organisation kind of evolved in recent years?
Yeah, okay, I'll give the lowdown of the history of Tonic Music. So Tonic Music was founded in 2012 by our current CEO, Steph Langen. Originally started as a non-profit based in Pompey, Portsmouth, providing music workshops for people in the local community, particularly as a sort of recovery through music element. And then in 2019, Tonic Music became a registered charity. And then with the COVID pandemic, there was a need to move services from in-person to online. Now, by doing that, you kind of then are able to work nationally. So weirdly, the pandemic kind of sort of led to Tonic Music becoming a national charity. And we're very proud, over the past 5 years, we've established this aim of essentially establishing good mental health within music communities. That's our aim as a charity. And with that, we provide tailored mental health support to 2 distinct groups that are part of music communities. We have Tonic Rider, which provides mental health support to people working in music. So musicians, roadies and crew, managers and agents, festival and venue staff, anyone who is earning any form of income from working in music, and we don't have an economic criteria for that. So from the sort of musician side, that can be international stadium touring artist, or it could be a busker, it could be someone who's playing the grassroots circuit, the pub circuit. We don't have that economic criteria because we see it as working in music. And on the flip side, we have the Never Mind the Stigma program, which provides mental health support to music fans and hobbyist musicians.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I saw that on your website, the kind of the different strands, if you like, that fall under Music Tonic as it's kind of changed over the years. It's so interesting to hear about that. If you kind of, would it be fair to split it into kind of three kind of, so like the music industry side that you mentioned there, the fan side, and then the kind of the youth side of it, so providing access to, the original starting point for Music Tonic, that kind of access to programs, is that still an aspect of the company?
Yeah, so interestingly, so I guess over the past 5 years, Tonic Music is really, I don't want to say pilot years, but we've been developing, how do we provide this tailored mental health support? How do we position that? So we're come to the point of having the two programs. That one is the kind of for people who professionally engage in music, and the other side for people who recreationally engage in music. And you mentioned the program we provided for young people, so Tonic Futures, which is for 18 to 25-year-olds. So that it still exists. It just comes under the Tonic Rider program, so it's kind of a project rather than its own program. But yes, we launched last spring, through funding via the Christopher Meredith Foundation, this Tonic Futures package of mental health support, which provides very much similar to Tonic Rider, same elements of mental health support, but it's exclusively for 18 to 25-year-olds who work or study in music. So originally we were doing that with some partners, but now it's open to all 18 to 25-year-olds who work in music. Very much as that kind of preventative approach, because equipping skills in terms of as they develop their career, but also as well it can be difficult for a young person to go on to a group, a course, a workshop with people who are 20, 30, 40 years experienced in the industry, and maybe it can be quite daunting. So we felt the need to have that kind of package of support. And since then as well, over the last few months, we've launched kind of a second project on the Tonic Rider, which is called Agents and Managers, which not the most original title, but it's just very much, it does what it says on the tin. It's mental health support tailored for music agents and music managers. So again, having their own kind of area of mental health support to focus on that, because we recognise that with a lot of conversation around mental health and music agents and managers are either not included in the discussion or to some extent kind of blamed in that discussion, and that's not correct. So we felt the need to offer that exclusive mental health support as well.
I did read a little bit about that. And it was so nice to see that. There's a number of things that really, really touched me about the charity, actually. But one of the aspects was exactly that, because it is sometimes it's like the focus is solely on music creators. So often we look through that lens of what it's like for a music creator. This podcast does that, but that's only a piece of the puzzle, isn't it? There's all the people that have been active for many, many, many years, that deal with the ups and downs, who are just people, right? It's the same thing as well-known musicians that get up on stage that play to big crowds. A lot of people that fall into that category. They're just people, right?
Absolutely. But also as well, we feel that there's lately been this kind of focus on, you notice I haven't actually used the word industry yet, and because that's a bit of a tactic of trying not to use the word music industry.
Do you? Why is that?
So for two reasons, we're kind of just trying to move away from the term. Firstly, it should be plural, so it should be industries rather than industry, because it's like we're talking about multiple kind of sectors, aren't we, that overlap.
Yeah. Good point.
Also as well, there's this kind of, when you say and it's very difficult for me to not use the word industry, because for 10 years of me being in this field, it's been mental health in the music industry. But it kind of takes the focus away from the people within this ecosystem, this sector, and kind of focuses this kind of almost emergent level of property that doesn't, we're kind of dehumanizing that discussion when we're looking at it from the kind of industry. And let's look at, what do we mean by working musician? And I'm writing a piece at the moment that says, what comes to mind when someone says the word musician or working musician? Usually there's two people that will come to mind. A pop star, rock star, someone from the popular music world, or B, someone from the classical music world in an orchestra. But these are not the only musicians that are working. There's, of course, multiple genres within popular music. There's multiple genres within the kind of more art music side. There's opera, there's musical theatre. Let's not forget, DJs come into that. Songwriters who don't perform come into that as well. You've even got as well military musicians, church musicians. They're still working musicians. It's a slightly different industry, but nevertheless some of the same stresses. And also then looking at, like I mentioned earlier, about buskers, but also music therapists, community musicians, people who, music teachers. So again, you wouldn't straight away, if you thought about the word musician, you wouldn't think, oh yeah, music teacher. You would most likely think of popular classical. So that's the other thing as well. So kind of try and look at it as people working in music, which is it's a clunky term, but it's kind of taken away from whatever this industry is, because for a lot of particularly working musicians, they may not see themselves working in the music industry. If you're playing the pub circuit, do you see yourselves working in the music industry, or is it kind of seen as something a little bit sort of more on an arena level? If you're unsigned, so if you're not with a label or not even have a manager, are you in the music industry? Yes, but there's kind of elements where a lot of artists have made that kind of proactive choice to not work with a label, not have a manager, because they're kind of almost rejecting that industry tag. So I think at Tonic Music, we very much are kind of trying to look at it in different ways, and kind of, it's always been about mental health in the music industry, but let's look at it in a different way. And who are the people that work in music, and how can we be a voice for them as well, as opposed to kind of just adding these kind of terms and labels, which doesn't apply to everyone who works in music. And that's very much been, particularly, I've been at charity for 4 years, but it's very much been kind of a learning process for us of, okay, how do we represent this community, really?
Yeah, good. God, I love that. Like you've really challenged the way that I think there, in a really cool way. I've often wondered about that. I've never really been vocal about that before, Jeordie, but I'm now thinking the same thing. Yeah, it's like sometimes I'll talk to like my students at the university where I teach part time, and and they'll say, "At what point am I in the music industry?"
Yeah,
and I'll often say I'll try and be as useful as I can in my response, but I kind of think, well, it's when you say, really, it's that you don't necessarily kind of open a door and walk in and go, hey, I'm here now. It's more like if you're an active part of a community, if you're releasing music online, whatever it might be, you're inserting yourself into either a real or a digital realm, or both, and therefore, you're a part of that. You're a piece of the fabric, the whole tapestry of what connects us all. And if you feel like you're not, then it might be, just because you're in a different subsector. So the music industries, I'm going to use that from now on.
Yeah, I believe it was, I might be wrong, I believe it's Martin Clunan who come up with that. It's definitely a citable term. I might be wrong in terms of the citation, but also as well to note, our most senior psychotherapist on the team is Dr. Adam Freitchek.
I know Adam.
So from drummer from Baby Shambles, but also psychotherapist, and in my opinion, the number one expert in mental health in music. And
Yeah.
it's very much been Adam who has kind of helped us with that kind of approach to how to view this kind of subject, because Adam has completed his doctorate and he's published 2 journal articles. I think there's a third on the way. And without, giving too much away, because it's very much for Adam to talk about, but he focuses on the term musicking, sort of music as a verb rather than a noun. And he brings that in his research around the mental health of musicians. Absolutely recommend people check out Dr. Adam Freitchek's work. It's free to access. The journals are in. It's free to access. So just put Adam Freitchek into Google Scholar and his journal articles will come up. I think it's a very refreshing way to look at this topic and to look at this kind of group of people, shall we say, because it's very much been on an industry focus. And there's researchers out there who say the music industry is inherently bad or evil, and it's like it's by taking that approach, it's not looking at the individuals in terms of musicians. So musicians, there's personality traits that lead to poor mental health. There's childhood experiences that lead to poor mental health. There's, potentially genetics that lead to poor mental health. Pre-existing conditions before working in music that lead to poor mental health. So by having that industry focus, you completely ignore the experiences of musicians. And let's not forget, for a lot of musicians, they will become a working musician because they started playing music as a coping mechanism. And they might have written songs about negative times in their life. So, of course, there's going to be a vulnerability to poor mental health. It's not completely the industry, in quotation marks. There are these other elements. So, the researchers and the advocates who are 100% focused on the music industry are not doing musicians any justice at all by talking like that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Adam featured in my... he and I used to play music together a very, very long time ago. But he featured in... I interviewed him in my book last year, and he talked about many, many wonderful things. One of the things, and I don't want to butcher his quote here, because he's far more articulate about it than I am, but he talked about the difference between mental health and mental pressures. And kind of defining the difference between the two and just kind of accepting that there is a difference. And my goodness, he explains it a lot better than I do. But it really got me thinking. I thought, wow, yeah, it's he's so Jeordie, you're in you're doing a PhD at the minute, right?
I am doing a PhD, which the PhD led me to joining Tonic. Again, just contacted Tonic because of my PhD, and then now working as the programs lead at Tonic Music, which is amazing. Yeah, so my PhD focuses on substance use amongst working musicians. So looking at the prevalence and contributory factors of substance use within the population of working musicians. But again, taking that perspective of not just popular recording artists, not just orchestral musicians, but all working musicians. And it's an international study. There's a survey that's currently out, which people can complete, and it's open to anyone regardless of history of substance use. So people who are abstinent to people who are heavy users across legal substances, so alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, illicit substances, misuse of prescription substances. So looking at it like that, looking at substance use as opposed to addiction, just looking at the behaviour of substance use. And very much the research has been influenced by working at Tonic Music, which has completely changed my perspective of the research, because before it was very much industry, popular musicians, recording artists. But again, working at Tonic Music has helped kind of change that approach. And of course, working with Adam, who was a massive inspiration. When I started sort of researching this topic 9 years ago, it was Adam who was my biggest inspiration, because wow, there's a musician who's a psychotherapist. So it's amazing that years later he's a colleague, and he continues to inspire my work. And we are also as well, we're currently working on a research project. The data collection is complete with Zara Vernon from the University of Portsmouth, which is where I go for my PhD. We've just done a survey around mental health in music, but in a different way to it's been done before. So we're at the point of analysing that data, and then that should hopefully be published this year. So again, another amazing thing is I get to work with Adam on a research project, which has been just an absolute pleasure. Do you know what I mean?
Complete highlight. What a collaboration.
Yeah, he is... he's just like you said about the way he can articulate stuff is just like just phenomenal. How he can kind of deconstruct. I mean, I find it fascinating. And he has been the biggest influence because, you know, the way of looking at things differently, taking this sort of different perspective. You know, I love how he uses musicking within his work. I think that's really great because it's, for me, it's like, yes, we look at musician work as portfolio careers, but musicking goes one step further to that. So I think that's very much great. So his research is fascinating. It's really, really good.
Oh, that's brilliant. Wow. You send him my best, won't you, when you speak to him next? I love Adam. That's wow.
It's very good, yeah. And so yeah, that's the thing. And like I said about with my research, it is just looking at substance use, which is an interesting topic because it's like we seem to know so much about it but don't. So that's why it's always fascinated me to kind of look at it in that way. So
well, it's certainly a huge issue throughout the creative industries. And whereabouts are you in your studies? Are you kind of halfway through, towards the end, or
probably quarter way through?
Wow,
it's part time. I mean, most of my work is around tonic music, which to me, I always feel like I did the kind of career progression the other way round because I think I did academia, started my PhD a long time ago, and for COVID and different reasons had to pause it. But I think I always would have wanted to go into kind of working with a charity that provides mental health support because that's what I originally worked in health and social care and did health and social care years and years and years ago. So to meet Steph and then that lead into me working with Tonic Music and be part of an amazing team. We've got an amazing team that's built these two programs. So the PhD for me has now become a point of I'm doing it to give knowledge and understanding to particularly working musicians, but also people who work in music, this information. So yeah, it's kind of gone the other way, but it's very good stuff.
Wow. And so is one of the goals there presumably to kind of to spot patterns and then work on the preventative side?
Yeah, I would say so. So we at Tonic Music we do a substance use awareness workshop in music. So looking at the different factors that contribute to substance use, and it'd be great to develop that. So yeah, to provide knowledge on the prevalence, provide knowledge on contributing factors, and then work on something with Tonic Music about, okay, how can we kind of with a harm reduction approach, do you know what I mean? Because there's some great work out there around therapy for addiction, but it's like, what's the kind of psych ed stuff that could be done around that? Because it's just very much about, it's pitfalls. It's never about kind of going, right, substances should be removed from music environments and etc. It can never be about that because that's not the answer in terms of harm reduction. People can use substances and it never becomes problematic. We know that. We know that there's certain kind of different factors that lead into it becoming problematic for someone. So it's about identifying them and what can we do in our work. I think the position we tend to take is a lot easier to be able to adapt the services we provide as opposed to making changes in the kind of music industries themselves, because it's a money-making kind of world, isn't it? It's very difficult to be like, this is what needs to be done here. Very, very difficult. It has been done. There's been change. There's some great advocacy work, but it's hard. And that also leads into it. It kind of has a level for each. It has an impact on each of the levels we provide in terms of mental health support. So the work we do at Tonic Music, we have 4 levels of mental health support, which you could say is kind of a progression, recovery-based sort of thing. But really, participants register and they can access the services whenever they like, in whatever order, however they want to do that. But the 4 levels we provide, on the first level, we do provide therapy sessions. Of course, there's always, the demand outweighs the kind of amount we have to offer, but it's developing, and that's psychotherapy, that's counselling. On the next level, we provide peer groups. So we do peer groups that are open to anyone in music. We do peer groups that are exclusively for women in music. We do peer groups around neurodiversity in music. So all different kind of 6-week peer groups led by psychotherapists. We do, on the third level, skills workshops, that kind of psych ed stuff. And then on the fourth level, training courses. So if you think about the workshops are equipping skills to support yourself, the training courses equipping skills to support others. So that's why we provide mental health first aid and suicide first aid light. So it's that kind of more, it gradually gets more preventative as you go along the program. And, with the substance use stuff, that could theoretically go into any level. And we've got a range of expertise in the team as well. So my colleague Jade, who's one of our psychotherapists, also runs peer groups, facilitates our peer groups, loads of expertise in music performance anxiety, for example. So we've been able to develop a peer group focusing on music performance anxiety, a workshop on music performance anxiety, support sessions on music performance anxiety. So that's been, so there's a great range of expertise on the team.
Oh, that's brilliant. I particularly love the, that's all fantastic and inspiring to hear, but the peer groups there is really interesting because music can be a very isolating thing for a lot of people. I mean, I know it shouldn't be, but it's easy to say that and it's harder to do, isn't it? And I was recently talking to Matt Griffiths from Youth Music. He was on the podcast a few weeks ago, and we were talking about that subject because the unusual thing is, Jeordie, is that in this current era of the podcast, I'm talking to a lot of people from the createch world, AI builders and stuff. And then on the other hand, I'll go and talk to people like Matt or yourself or others. And I see in the middle, I see a bit of a disconnect sometimes of kind of tools that are being built that enable people to work on their own. And then problems with isolation and loneliness, which don't seem to be getting any better. I know that you work obviously with a lot of kind of, Gen Z 18 up to 25 in the programs that you mentioned earlier. Is loneliness, isolation, is that a common problem that you witness?
Huge thing. And it's interesting to get, the age range. The youngest participant we've ever had is 18, because that's the youngest someone can be. The oldest, I think, is 82, I think we've had.
Wow.
So it's a big range, big differences in career. And isolation's a huge thing. So with the peer groups, we've been running the peer groups now for over 4 years. We must have run 30 or 40 peer groups now. And they're a lifeline to people because it is isolating. And we've done peer groups on different themes, different aspects. We did a peer group for, I don't really know how you kind of said it. It was kind of a peer group for working musicians who would reduce their kind of working career. So kind of, I don't want to say semi-retired or anything like that, but for different reasons, were less able to work in music. Did a peer group around that. Really, really vital. And we found that many of our peer groups will form WhatsApp groups. I've formed our own WhatsApp groups, even if they're from different roles. So it could be one person's a festival director, another person's a roadie, another person is, say, for example, an orchestral musician, but they'll form a WhatsApp group to go, I'm going through this, what do you guys think? And we also now, well, I say now, we've been doing it for over 2 years, but we do a drop-in group. So for anyone who does one of our peer support groups and attends at least half the sessions, they get invited to a weekly drop-in group, which is kind of all former peer support group participants, and that just runs every Wednesday for 90 minutes with 2 of our psychotherapists, so Adam and Jade, and it's just there as much as participants want it. So some weeks they may attend for several weeks and they might have a break, but it's just there as that kind of people who work in music group to talk about their experiences and what's going on. And of course, and our facilitators, as well as being mental health practitioners, they're all from the world of music. So there's that kind of empathy and understanding. And that's been a great success. So that's now funded also by Christopher Meredith Foundation, the peer groups and the drop-in group. And it's great work. It's really, really good. And it's nice how new participants join and they're welcome into the group, and it's a safe group because there's mental health practitioners, so the safeguarding processes are in place as well, and just really, really wonderful that we do that, because it's a completely isolating career, and sometimes the relationships you make can be, sometimes built on paper because it's a professional relationship, not a personal relationship, and so how do you, because it's capitalism. Music is capitalism. That's what it is. So sometimes relationships can be, where's the boundaries? As well as isolation, boundaries is a really big thing. And it can be difficult. It can be difficult to talk with your bandmates if there's, if you're experiencing poor mental health. You maybe can't talk to your label. Maybe you can, but maybe you can't. You maybe can't, that kind of fear of replacement is a big thing as well. So the peer groups and drop-in groups provide that safe, confidential, non-judgmental space.
Yeah, that's so specialist as well to have people, like Adam, like Jade, with their background and their knowledge. I mean, excuse me, they are uniquely positioned there. I mean, it's not every day you come across such specialists. I mean, with some of the major music conglomerates now have like a kind of dedicated artist and staff wellbeing department, and contemporary music institutions are also kind of going the same way, which is really, really good. But very often it is just a kind of referral, which I'm not downplaying. It's brilliant because that never used to be a thing. So it's wonderful. What do you want the future to look like in terms of mental health awareness across the music industries?
Interesting question. So I feel we've had 10, 12 years of mental health awareness in music, particularly since Amy Winehouse died. For me, that's where I see the turning point. There was loads of research before, in the 80s, there was Jeffrey Wills and Susan Rayburn who did research around mental health in music. So there were conversations. I mean, it goes back to the 50s. It even goes back to, the 1890s. There's research out there, but it never seemed to kind of stick. That seemed to be the turning point. We've had a real long time, Steph, myself, Adam, Jade, we talk about, we've had this mental health awareness, now times of mental health action. Now, for that, we need everyone who's part of these industries, this ecosystem, to be proactive. Whether that's organizations having their own welfare team, I think there's a debate around that. I don't think it's a simple yes/no answer. But there is also the value in, for example, Tonic Music. We are a registered charity. We are separate to those organizations. So it means it's increased confidentiality, or at least certainly increased perception of confidentiality, because, if you're receiving support within the organization you work in, there's always going to be that worry in the back of your head, of course, naturally, be like, HR, for example. So I think we need organizations to, at the very least, kind of have an area where it's like, if you're experiencing poor mental health, here's where you can go. Here's Tonic Music. Here's other organizations, for example. Here's, NHS. Let's not forget, in crisis, it's always NHS. It's never a charity. It's always the NHS. 999, A&E. That's where to go for when it's a crisis point. But having that real clear information, that is almost just anyone who works in music knows that's what to do. And I feel I think in terms of the arts, music is way more ahead than acting, dance, circus performance. I just feel it is because there's a lot more charities, there's a lot more discussions, there's more books, there's more research. It just seems to be ahead of the curve, maybe because music is so widespread. Because you go into a shop and there's music, you go into a cafe, there's music. There isn't always other forms of art, for example. But then I also feel there's other industries where maybe it's I look at football, and there's certain football gambling charities, for example. I feel like every young footballer probably knows they exist. That has become part of the conversation. That is already there. we also feel, and we're very privileged this year because we were able to provide our first two actual university lectures on mental health in music that were part of modules. So not just like a extracurricular, it was part of modules, and we did that at the University of Huddersfield, and we did that as well at the Royal Northern College of Music. But there is a
Brilliant.
need for particularly music courses to have, maybe it's a whole module, maybe it's a lecture or two focusing on mental health in music. And I am aware that there are certain modules at certain universities doing this, but it needs to be kind of
Not
like,
enough though. No.
yeah, and it's not, and it needs to
I
be
think
in classical. You have performing arts medicine. So in classical music, you've got performing arts medicine that I don't think has ever really took off with popular music.
oh no,
I
I've
don't
never
think it
heard
has.
of that before.
Yeah, it's so there's a whole. I'm for example part of the Performing Arts Medicine Association, and I was very lucky to present both my PhD last year at the conference in London and also the Tonic music research that we're doing. But I just don't feel that kind. You know, and performing arts medicine focus not just on mental health but vocal health, hearing health, musculoskeletal health. I just don't think we have that conversation enough, particularly within popular music. Certainly not on popular music courses. It just it's there needs to be more. There needs to be more, but it takes time. It takes time for
Yeah.
curriculums to change. But again, it would be good to have a lecture that focus on that. But at the at the end, it's like, and these are the services that are here. The
Yeah.
Tonic music, for example, that would be really strong as well. So there's a long way to go, but the progress has been good. I think it's been good. At least it's a lot better than if there'd been no progress, for example.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's true. Well, you mentioned about change there, Geordie, and of course it does take change and change makers, cultural shifts. On that note, I just want to circle back to something you said earlier that really captured my imagination, and that was about how attitudes perhaps towards mental health awareness shifted when we lost the late great Amy Winehouse. I've never thought about it in that way before, but there was a shift at that point, wasn't there?
I felt there was, and this was actually before I even did research on the topic. This is just when just an interest. I've always had an interest in music and musicians and behavior, I guess. But I kind of see that before the passing of Amy Winehouse, there was a kind of, well, I always look at it as three kind of strands. I see it that poor mental health in music has either been romanticised by the media, so kind of like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, the heroin chic, etc., etc. If it's not romanticised, it's been demonised. So again, with Amy Winehouse, that kind of that venomous critique of Amy Winehouse that is really cruel within the media. Or then it becomes medicalised, which is good, but then it becomes sometimes over medicalised, where it's like a musician is seen as unwell as opposed to musician. So then you kind of, sometimes it gets a little bit too much. And it's important that we have the medicalisation, but also empathy. Empathy is the key thing with this conversation, that understanding, that non-judgmental approach and non-celebratory approach as well. I feel it shifted with Amy Winehouse, and I know there's colleagues of mine that agree. Not particularly sure why that at that point, but if you think about before, the way the media spoke about Amy Winehouse in particular, it was very negative, cruel, very press taking photos left, right, and centre. And of course, that still happens in terms of the press, but I don't think the media is as venomous
No.
with discussions around poor mental health, particularly with musicians, maybe celebrities as a whole. Because if you think, since then there's been the passing of Chester Bennington, Chris Cornell, Keith Flint, Avicii, Taylor Hawkins, Liam Payne, that beforehand the media weren't quite as nasty. There's
Yeah.
little bits with Liam Payne I noticed that were a little bit negative, but I don't feel it's so much. So I kind of feel that change led into more research in the UK. That change led to charities focusing their work on mental health. That led to, suddenly there was more psychotherapists that were from the world of music. I'm not saying the psychotherapists did their training for that, but I'm just saying it was interesting that after that there just seemed to be a lot more attention on this kind of field, and it has become a field. Mental health music has become an academic field. It's become a field in terms of charity and mental health support work. There's books on it. There's a lot more discussion about it. There's a lot of young people. So when we go and do talks at different universities, whether that's on the curriculum or not, we're also noticing that a lot of particularly young musicians and young people working in music are a lot more open and have more conversation and have kind of an increased emotional intelligence around mental health in music, which is really encouraging because, but there's a lot more to go.
Yeah.
Like, it's really great that we see major artists cancel a tour, postpone a tour, and saying it's due to their mental health. But you can't do that if you're a grassroots artist because of that kind of fear of being replaced. If you hit a certain level, if you're a certain certain level artist, there's no one that can replace you in that regard. It's not quite the same on the grassroots level yet. It's not as easy. And again, it's not, whereas that works for the international artist, that the tour manager for that tour or the roadies or crew on that tour can't do that as well. So there's still a lot of work to do, but we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, good point. Wow. Jeordie, I'm mindful of time, but I want to say a huge thank you to you. You're a top guy. You do a lot of really, really good things for a lot of good people, and you are yourself a change maker. You personally, as well as Music Tonic, and on behalf of the silent majority, I thank you for what you do.
That's great. It's very much with Tonic. It's very much a team thing. I'm cog in a wheel. It's amazing team. Like I mentioned, Steph, our founder and CEO, Dr. Adam Fajcek, Jade on our mental health team, Stan on our mental health team, and then the support as well that we have, our support team with Billy, with Dave, with Jen, with Resh, trustees, patrons, ambassadors, volunteers, Leo as well. So Leo, who does our logistics, a fantastic team all round. Two of our volunteers, Mar and Pa Langen. Mar Langen is in her 80s now, works at a lot of our festival work, because we provide mental health lounges at festivals, both front of house and backstage across the UK. So again, and that's an amazing support we offer. So it's a massive team. It's a small team, but it's a massive community. I feel we have with Tonic, and we're all needed within that. And also as well, for anyone who wants to know, easy to access Tonic Music services, tonicmusic.co.uk. Put that in the URL, do you call it? The address bar.
Yes, I'll put a link to it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Underneath. And then there's a Tonic Rider button, there's a Never Mind a Stigma button, and then it gives information about the programs and how to register for them, which they're online, so so you don't have to travel anywhere. And everyone who registers receives a one-to-one consultation appointment, a video call with one of our mental health team prior to going on to the program to explore, what would be beneficial for them as well. So it's a whole great sort of process of support.
Wow. Inspiring. Okay, I'll drop a link to that then, Jeordie, underneath the podcast description so that people can find it. No, thank you. Top man. Right, well, we'll leave it there for today, but thank you so much for your time, Jeordie. It's greatly appreciated.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Jeordie's great. What a good dude. I must say, we actually carried on talking for about an hour after that, but just about the subject of football. So I didn't include that in the podcast. So that would be a different podcast. Anyway, guys, it's very interesting to hear what Tonic Music do. It's so needed, isn't it, what they do? It's so important. In the decade that we're in now, we hear a lot, don't we, about mental health, and for good reason. But for the benefit of those that don't know, the polar opposite used to be true. And when I say used to be, it wasn't all that long ago. Tonic Music set up in 2012, as I mentioned earlier and as Jeordie mentioned, but since then they've evolved. And if you think about it, the world has evolved quite dramatically, hasn't it, since 2012, especially in terms of technological use. It's very interesting as well that our conversation never touched upon social media, which I thought it would, and it didn't, because of course that can be a factor, right, in mental health and self-comparisons and that kind of thing. I think, we're in an industry that has a lot of highs and lows, and when we go up and when we go down and we go back up again and we go down, that does something to somebody. And it's very important that we are aware of that so that we can avoid it, and also so that when we get to that point, we know what we can do. And that used to be a very, very difficult thing to do because it felt very isolating. And thanks to Tonic Music, that's not really the case anymore. They are there for everybody, not just those that work in creating music, but those that work on the business side, though, music fans, young people that do a lot of preventative work. It's nice to be able to shine a light on what they do and their importance in the bigger picture of everything. Okay, that's enough from me today. Thank you for being here, everybody. Wherever you are, have a great day, and may the force be with you. The music.